My name is Bob Quam. I have been associated with the Minnetonka schools in different capacities for several decades. Today, it is an honor and a privilege to introduce my friend Lynn Krafve. I met Lynn Krafve when we were both members of the Minnetonka High School math department. That was before we had all the new technology to help us in the classroom. No computers, no graphing calculators, or smartboards. We did have one very old 16mm movie projector and a few old films about square roots, pi, and other esoteric math concepts. My first encounter with Lynn was when we were both struggling to get a film projector to work. I was beginning my first year at Minnetonka, and Lynn had just returned from a year of graduate study at Rutgers, where he had earned his master's degree. Every time we thought we had the projector ready to use and turned it on, another part of the machine would fall off and roll around the floor. It was during this episode that I was first exposed to Lynn's useful sense of humor. What started out would seem to be a disaster to a young teacher was laughed away. We just picked up our box of chalk and headed for our classrooms. Other things were different in those days. We had a close-knit staff of math teachers with our own little closet-sized math office equipped with a mimeograph machine to print off our materials, a coffee pot, and an office telephone, and a card table where we would often stay past the school workday and play bridge. Lynn was a very important member of that group. Lynn loves to fish. Opening walleye season was always in the middle of May. By that time of year, we were all ready to break from the classroom. Another big event for us was the state basketball tourney. There was only one class of teams. In those days, there were 8 teams that made it to the state tournament. It was absolutely the biggest sport event in the state at the time. We would all pile in the car and head for Williams Arena to fight our way through the crowds. Between games, we would head over to Nye's or Mancini's for dinner and cocktails. We often had such fun time at the restaurant, we didn't make it back to the second game. Lynn was a gifted athlete in both high school and college. He was a basketball star at Carleton, where he was quick enough to dodge popcorn boxes and other missiles thrown at him from the balcony of the old gym at St. Olaf, where they played their crosstown rivals. He also excelled in track. You could not tell it by watching him now, but he was a gifted golfer. He claims to have been a tennis player, but in the 50 years I have known him, I have never seen him with a tennis racket in his hands. Today, Lynn is a respected member of our community who loves Minnetonka and is always available to help the Minnetonka schools in any way he can. After retirement, Lynn tutored and helped dozens of math students. I know personally that Lynn has used his talent and contacts to help elect school board members whom he thought would be the best job for our students, staff, and community. Lynn is a wonderful father, grandfather, and husband, as evidenced by his 2 children, Michael and Allison, and their families. Lynn and his wife, Jackie, love to travel and spend time in Florida each winter. I see Lynn on a regular basis, and I am continually impressed when he encounters one of his ex-students and athletes. They all show such respect and love to talk to him about the time he had them in the classroom or the athletic field. Some of the women also show a little flutter in their eye. You should know that Lynn was voted best dressed teacher by the student body. He was quite a handsome fellow when he was courting Jackie and was always on his best behavior whenever they were together. He is a natural leader and keeps tabs on all the retired teachers. He organizes activities and gathers them together once a month to talk about the old times at Minnetonka. He also keeps himself and the rest of us current on any of our health issues. Many of our friends, he is a great friend, and I look forward to many more years of our friendship. Thank you very much.
Well, Bob, maybe I should just tear up my notes and just swing it here, but I was nervous because Bob volunteered to introduce me, which always makes you nervous because he wants to do something, but he was pretty good. He only took a few shots at me that were sort of questionable. But I thank you for doing that, Bob. We go back 50 years and many stories. First, I will introduce my family. Jackie, who, you can stand up please, who suffered with me for 47 years. My daughter Allison, stand up. My husband Tim. And the two grandchildren, Victoria and Tomas, stand up and put your hands up. And Michael, who has Alexa under control right now. Michael and his wife Rachel. Michael's a 93 graduate, and Allison was 88. I'm very honored, to be recognized by the Minnetonka Alumni Association. For many years, I've been talking with them about trying to get the faculty more involved, and I think one of the things we have done is to reach out to some of our faculty members who really were part of the process to feel like they're more involved. They have a database, and you can correct me, but I think the database is in excess of 20,000 former graduates that are around, and they're looking for people, and they're welcome to have people to get involved. It's a great organization. Well, I started here in 1958, and I turned 22 the first week of school. And that's 55 years ago. So I'll do the math. You should be able to figure out what that means. I just had a birthday 2 weeks ago. So, and I've actually lived in this community since that time, except the year I was in graduate school. So I've been part of this school district and know really so many people, administrators and teachers, etc., all that time. Well, Bob alluded to the years that we had nothing but ditto machines and stencils and mimeographs and no copy machines. And what we did have, we had Frieden. You remember the Frieden calculator, about that size? It could do multiplication and division, and it just sounded like a machine. Just, whoops, pardon me. But we also had something called a mechanical analog computer. Now, Bill Diedrich might remember what a mechanical analog computer was. Bill was a math teacher along with myself. That is the technical name for a slide rule. And speaking of the slide rule, a slide rule went on Apollo 11 with Buzz Aldrin to the moon. They had very little ability to calculate. I mean, there were no calculators. Those little handheld things, you can punch in and do it. They weren't around for a long, long time. It was sort of a backup thing, and I don't know whether they actually used it, but any computer system they had there was large, so I thought that was certainly interesting. Talked about some coaching, and Rogge's talked about the cross country, et cetera, which I came in here as 22 years old. My experience with track was 100 yards, 200 yards, and a long jump. And they said, the athletic director said, well, some kids want to start a cross-country team. Would you do it? Well, I said, well, sure, I'll do it. He said, so, okay. We said, well, that's the good news. The bad news, we don't have any money to pay you. But the fact, but I did it. And really, really interesting. Yeah, remember the Copper Stein out here? That was I had two of my runners were Kobersteins, and their parents owned the Copper Stein, and that's where the name came from. There's a fact out of somewhere. But we had a good run of kids. And Rogge's, I think, spoken about Bruce Johnson, who was here, who came off the football field and became a great cross-country runner, a state mile champion. So we had a string of, I don't know whether, suddenly we had a string of good runners, year after year, and it continued on. And in fact, Rogge was a student teacher here in '60, I believe, in the fall, and he helped me with cross country, and he had some experience running, and of course, then he sucked all of the knowledge that I had and took it right with him, right? Oh, it was a good start, and they did a beautiful job of continuing that tradition. The track, as some of you will remember, we had the first track we had at Minnetonka washed into the swamp. When they first built it, they had big rain, and everything's gone. The second track was cinders, sort of, and we didn't hold a meet here until 64, maybe, or 65, on a regular cinder track. In fact, we had the Lake Conference meet here, and we had the Stager story. Bob and I talked about that. We had, you have Stagers for your relays. Well, it turned out that we had a 4x100 relay, and my fast guy ran 110, and my slow guy ran 90. Now, and we happened to, I think we even won, the conference meet, but the coach from St. Louis Park, Orbeez, is well known. He came storming up the hill, and I thought he was going to choke me. I said, I didn't do the Stagers. I didn't do the Stagers. They didn't do the Stagers. But it's still something we remember and joke about. One thing, when I leave track and cross country, these people are, I think, much different as an athlete. They're more, I coach a lot of basketball, but the dedication of a track person where there's no glory, there's not much stuff in the paper, all that you have is your personal goal. I mean, they're great people. You have to be tough to be a good track person. So I told my daughter that's why she was a track person, right? All right. I'll try to get you out of here soon. As I told somebody, I'd rather be deriving the fundamental theorem of integral calculus than be trying to do this off the wing like this. I'd be more comfortable doing that. But basketball, I helped. 65 was a first big year here, and I had helped Earl Christ from the time I came in '58 through that year, and then I became the head coach in the fall of '65, never having coached a basketball team in my life. A lot of people said after that, for the next 15 years, I probably showed, but we had some good teams, we had some mediocre teams, and we had some teams that were just not very good at all. What we did have, and I don't want to step on any toes here, we had Minnetonka kids. All of the kids that played for me were Minnetonka kids. We had no open enrollment. We had no recruiting. We had no kids shopping themselves. They were Minnetonka kids. So I can drive down Tonkawood Road and go by the Newman House, where two of my players lived, every time I go by there. When they did this little bio on me, the guy asked me, what was your record? You know, I don't know what my record is. Well, I do too. It's written here on my shirt. I really don't. I don't really care, and I didn't. I said we won some championships, and we were mediocre, and we lost some. But we had good kids, hardworking kids, and I see many of them. We have lots of stories. I could tell you stories, but there's some personal things and joke stuff, things that happened at halftime or something, that you don't appreciate, that I certainly appreciate. So, okay. We talked about a smaller time. What Raggy said, we had a small district. We had faculty wives, bridge club. We had we had faculty picnics up there on Highway 7. We had a much closer group before this area expanded. Most of the teachers lived here. So that's how, we still hang together, a lot of us. Fish together, meet together, etc. Sputnik, Steve, you talked about Sputnik. Sputnik changed our lives, the math teachers' lives. It happened in '57. I was a senior in college, and that's when the space race began. And that's when the National Science Foundation says, hey, we got to do something to upgrade math and science education. And they had year-long institutes, math, science. So I spent a whole year, you might not think this was fun, but I spent a whole year taking math classes at Rutgers. And Bill Diedrich took a whole year, and 4 or 5 people took whole years when all those pieces came together, you people that, and I was the same way, I could memorize, but did I understand all this stuff even when I came out of college? But that whole year, some of these pieces that are floating out there finally came together. You can understand how this math sort of fits, and hopefully I projected that when I came back to my students. I saw Dr. Dreyer here before, and I told him, I was going to speak when he didn't have a chance to reply, and he got real nervous, but he's still smiling back there, I guess. We go back a long time, and he's always been a positive influence in this district, and I appreciate what he's done. Dr. Peterson, I saw him the other day coming out of the District Service Center, and I said, "No, you be kind to me because I speak after you do." And he was, thank you. I asked Mr. Charlie Cannon and I were talking last night. He just gave me a couple stories, but I don't have to use them because you were so kind to me. Okay, getting down to 5,000 students, I figure, 37 years and 135, plus cross-country track, basketball, a lot of people. I have been fortunate to be able to go to reunions, 50th reunions of the class of 60, 61, 62, 63, and 59 also. And it's an amazing experience. I can tell you that people come up and tell you things about the alarm clock that somebody put on my desk, or the Playboy thing they put on the screen before pulled down, or whatever, all the things, the fun things, and then they'll come up and say, I didn't work very hard. And I say, well, I'll agree with that. And they'll say, I wish I'd worked harder. And I said, yeah, I wish you had too. And a lot of people don't work very hard in high school. These are 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. What were you thinking when you were that age? About math, about whatever? No, not necessarily. But it's really interesting to see what's happened after 50 years, because my first students are 70 years old, when 69 and 68. Well, in our business, we don't make widgets and gadgets. I guess we try to make people. And hopefully, a little bit of us is in them, and vice versa. I'm trying to close here. This is tough. I thought about this, how I was going to do this at about 4 o'clock this morning. If you go back years, there was a TV program called with Ralph Edwards. Remember Ralph Edwards? Called This Is Your Life. We put somebody out, sit them down, and bring people out, that they from the past. Well, that's the way I feel when I go to these reunions. And I see people I haven't seen for 50 years. They come out. This story, wonderful experience. So, like today, when I see some people, Keith Nord, we hadn't seen for a long time, and Brian Lindquist, etc., and Bob Williams Jr., same way. You get the same feeling. You're sitting there, and here comes part of your life. So I feel like this is your life, or this is my life, part of it, a good part of it. Thank you very much.